Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Today is incredible. I am so thrilled because we have such an amazing announcement, as you probably saw, is Neil Schori has joined Call to Peace Ministries as the director of church partnership, and I am so excited for him to be here. We've interviewed him in the past and connected with him. Actually, I'll tell you a brief story. Before we introduce him, we interviewed and connected with him, and Joy was like, "I wish we could bring you on staff." And he was just felt like he embodied so much of our heart, and to see that come to pass is just so exciting. It feels like it was something that was just so ordained by God and just so anointed. So let's get started. And let's get started first where he's like, who is everybody here, and everything. So I've introduced Neil. Dan, can you introduce yourself? That would be important.
Yep, my name's Dan. I serve as the executive director with Call to Peace Ministries now, having been basically in Neil's role for the past, 3-ish years. And yeah, you'll hear more from me in a little bit. So.
Yes. Well, we're excited both of you are here today. Neil, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? What is your background? What did you do? Where's your education from and everything too?
Yeah. So I've been a pastor for about 20 years, and I've served in multiple churches in the Chicagoland area, and also as a chaplain for hospice. I've been a volunteer police chaplain as well. So kind of a diverse pastoral experience. I have a bachelor's degree in political science. I have a master's degree in counseling from the seminary that I attended. So I've joked about this many times, probably too many times, but I basically am educated in all the things that my grandma told me that you're not supposed to discuss in polite company. So that's a little bit about my background. I just finished 7 years as one of the lead pastors at the Edge Church in Aurora, Illinois. Still attending the Edge, so it's been a wonderful experience. But yes, I've felt this very strong leading now for more than 15 years to be more involved in domestic violence ministry. And I just love what Called to Peace does. I love what Called to Peace is all about. And I'm just so excited to join in and be a part of this incredible ministry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been interesting walking Neil through this process, going through the interviewing process and then getting to know him a little bit. When I took on the mantle of the executive director role, it's not lost on me how unique the church partnership program is, and that kind of backfilling that position was going to require somebody with some specific training and some unique experience to be able to equip church leaders in domestic abuse and coercive control to have an understanding of pastors and theology, being able to speak that language, but then also being able to lead a very passionate, very skilled team of volunteers in the church partnership program. So, my desire in finding my replacement in that role was to find someone where we wouldn't lose any momentum, that there wouldn't be things that are just kind of dropping to the side while we bring someone up to speed. And so it's been a lot of fun to see Neil come in, hitting the ground running. He's already doing some consultations in like his first full week here. Getting to know the staff, the liaison, the church partnership team. And so I think there's just a real growing excitement and eagerness to see how God's going to use Neil and the church partnership team as he leads them to be able to equip churches in every city. So.
Yes, we are so thrilled to death. And I just thought of another question people might be wondering. Neil, can you tell me about your background in understanding domestic abuse?
Yes. Yeah. It's, I was sort of thrown into it. This is not something that I would have said, hey, I really hope one day that I get involved in this sort of ministry. It's a profoundly sad ministry in a lot of ways because people enter into it and no one really wants to be someone who's experienced abuse, but abuse is so prevalent. And in 2007, I ended up connecting with a family in my church where I served as a counseling pastor. And really quickly, I found that I was really out of my depth. I really didn't know how to handle the situation, even though I have a master's degree in counseling. And over the course of about 5 to 6 sessions that I had with this individual and with her husband, sometimes together, sometimes separately, I realized there was a whole lot going on that I really didn't understand, and I just sensed how deeply wrong it was, and I wasn't sure of what to do. And ultimately, that woman shared with me. Her name was Stacy Peterson. She shared with me that her husband Drew had murdered his previous wife and used Stacy as an alibi. And then 2 months later, Stacy tragically disappeared and has never been discovered. After Stacy disappeared, I went to the police and I shared what I knew about her disappearance, Kathleen's disappearance, the third wife's disappearance, and it ended up reopening that case. And I testified against Drew Peterson, who was a police officer in the Chicagoland area, not far from me, and that really started my entry into this very complex sort of ministry. And the whole way I just said, Lord, show me how to know what I don't know yet. And God was so gracious to me. 2 years after I began praying for that, he brought an incredible advocate my way, who spent a lot of time with me, gave me a hard time, but in the best of ways. And she really helped me get on track with understanding domestic violence. And one of the things that she said that really sort of haunted me, and today I look back and I just see the Lord's hand in it, is she said, Neil, I really believe that you could be a part of changing church culture and how they respond to victims of abuse. And she said, would you like to do that? And I said, absolutely. And she looked at me kind of perplexed and she said, I just really gave you a hard time for several hours. And she goes, I did that on purpose to see how you'd respond. I'm like, oh, thanks a lot, Susan. And she said, but why did you say yes? And I said, very simple, because I've prayed for the Lord to show me what he had for me in this. And he's doing that through you. And she just looked at me and she goes, okay. And she said, well, if you mean it, we're going to meet a whole lot. And I kind of just said, oh, sure, of course. And I did mean it, but I didn't know exactly what she meant by we were going to meet a whole lot, until she called me about a week or two later. And she said, hey, Neil, you and I are going to meet with a victim at, it's like 11 or 1 or something. And I looked at my calendar on my computer at work and I said, well, Susan, I've got a few things going on today. And she goes, great, go ahead and cancel that. Clear your calendar for the rest of the day. She said, I promise you, there's nothing that you're going to do that's more important than what you're going to experience today. And I met with a victim for the first time. She was also a police officer's wife. And it honestly was one of the most eye-opening, heartbreaking, and invigorating things I've ever experienced, because my eyes were really opening to the reality that this was not just a situation that involved Stacy Peterson, who I got to know. This is an issue that affects so many women, so many families. And I just said yes in my heart. And I've just said yes in my heart all the way through. Every time the Lord's brought an opportunity to me related to domestic abuse, I've just said yes. If I've had any time on my schedule to say yes, I've said yes. And I have zero regrets.
Wow, I love that so much. I definitely feel like working with the abused and the oppressed is a calling from God. It is something that you are anointed to, and it's something that God leads you into. And that's why I get so excited about you being here. Is it's just so obvious that this is what God's put in your heart. And when the Holy Spirit does that and leads you into a place, he's going to do really amazing things. We have seen him work in so many ways, expand the call to peace. This is God's work. It's God doing. God sending partners and opening the hearts of churches and leaders. And so I'm excited to talk to you a little bit further and hear, what is the vision that God is putting in your heart to see? How do you want to see things grow and expand as the director of church partnership?
Well, I'm just starting to get my feet wet, but I am so excited. First of all, the liaisons that we have, I'm just starting to get to know, and I got to spend the weekend with them with Dan, and it really was incredible. We had so much fun connecting and so much fun just diving into this ministry, and I'm starting to get to know them and hear their hearts, and I'm more impressed than I can express right now. Just super impressed with this uniquely gifted team. So I'm excited personally about furthering my connection with them, getting to know what their strengths and desires are, and looking at how we can strategically reach more churches that maybe just haven't heard about this yet. How do we get this message out to more people? Because the thing that I would say to pastors, because I've been a pastor for so long, is whether you know it or not, whether you like this or not, domestic abuse is a reality in your congregation. So it's not something to be ashamed of, but it is something that you're now responsible for once you know. And I'm excited to see how this team can further mobilize to connect with more leaders and make churches learn how to have really good and healthy responses to victims of domestic abuse, but also to perpetrators in those congregations. We can minister to both sets of people.
Excellent. I'm excited about that. Dan, is there anything you want to add? I know you have probably a lot to say in everything too.
Well, no, I think one of the things that was evident very early on in my conversations with Neil was just his passion for this. And one of the things that does excite me about him taking on the mantle here. And I think that, his ideas, his creativity coming in and with his experience, like I said earlier, I really am excited to see where the church partnership program is going to go under his leadership. We have a very, very skilled team of liaisons already in place, ready to follow his lead, and so it's just going to be a lot of fun to see how God puts all that together. I think the phrase that has been used maybe sometimes too much, but certainly applies here is just, for such a time as this. And I see Neil's experience and passion just be a perfect fit for where we're at right now in our ministry. So.
Excellent. And then I have a question for you, Neil, and that is,
yes.
How do you feel like your background and the giftings that you have, how do you feel like that's going to cultivate the growth of the church partnership program?
Gosh, I mean, I really look back at the ways that I've served, my education, and just my overall experiences, things that God just seems to throw me into. I see so many things as being really perfect fits for this sort of ministry. With my master's degree in counseling from my seminary, from being a pastor for 20 years, from serving as a chaplain, so it's like a lot of crisis response. I worked one of my internships. I was consistently in the ER, meeting with people and helping them through spiritual crisis moments and just wrestling with big questions in life. I feel like the Lord has just uniquely designed me. I really can look back. It sounds a little cheesy maybe, but I really can look back and see his hand in every single step. Even with my background in political science, I've just always had a passion to understand what's going on in the world. I really want to understand trends. I want to understand how people are affected by life. I want to understand what people are looking at and how that impacts them and how they think and how they respond to others. And I think in doing that, I really try to look at the trends that occur. And I look at what Scripture says, and I look to see how those things combine so that we can respond rightly to victims of abuse and help churches that say, hey, we see that this is an issue, but we're not really sure how to respond. I really think God has just uniquely designed me for this. And in every way, I could explain personal background things to education to just the passion for justice balanced with the grace of just knowing Jesus. I think he has just, as Dan said, sort of like placed me here for such a time as this.
Awesome. Well, we are so excited that you're here. I'm so excited to see all that God is doing just to grow Call to Peace Ministries with Dan and the executive director position and Joy as founder, being able to work in her roles and revise her book. And you're here as the director. It's like so many good things that God is doing. And so I'm just excited to see how we're going to grow and expand with this leadership and expertise and strengths that we're bringing in. It just gets me excited because I know that Dan, I would love to hear more your vision as an executive director for the church partnership. As you said something excellent earlier in December, and I want to remind everybody of what your vision is for that.
Well, yeah, specifically to the church partnership programs, we want to see churches equipped to identify and respond well to domestic abuse in every city. It's a huge vision, mammoth undertaking, but one that we can achieve one community at a time. And we're trying to create initiatives that will take steps in that direction. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see how Neil begins to put all that together.
Yes. Well, I am thrilled to death. This will not be the first time you see Neil here on an interview. He will probably be joining me for deeper theological interviews, and Dan will be joining for different things too. So welcome to the team, Neil. We're so thrilled that you're here and looking forward to working together and partnering together to continue to show God's heart for the oppressed and work with churches.
Yeah.
So
Thank you, Lauren. And by the way, I love your passion and excitement. So you keep that energy. That's incredible. And Dan, thank you again for such an incredible, kind welcome.
Yes. Well, thank you. And I will have to mention too, absolutely why we are here. We are in a campaign right now. We are seeking to raise $65,000 to scholarship 100 women to our 2025 He Makes All Things New Women's Retreat. So right now we have raised a little bit, I think over 1,000. So we have a long ways to go. So we ask that you prayerfully consider partnering with us to send 100 women to our retreat. Our retreat will be May 1st through 4th in Lake Juneau-Alaska, North Carolina. And Neil will be here for that. And so will Dan as well. So you'll get an opportunity to meet them, hear more from them, and connect with them at a retreat. So if you've not registered yet, we invite you to register. So I'm going to drop some links in the comments so that you can partner with us in those capacities as well, and hopefully join us for the 2025 Women's Retreat. So thank you for joining us today. Is there any closing words that you have, Dan, or anybody?
I think we've covered it, honestly. But thank you for your support of our ministry, and even for considering contributing to our scholarship campaign for the retreat. We cannot do this without people partnering with us, and so join what God is doing through us, and we invite you to do that. So
absolutely, thank you, guys. Everybody have a wonderful day. We'll